This lecture will cover our discussion on the Big Bang and the origin stories, like the Kapampangan origin story. Humans have always sought to explain where we came from. It is a natural tendency or inclination among humans to search for their origins. Origin stories offer meaning, identity, and our connection also with nature. They also shape our cultural memory and scientific curiosity. Now, in the second bullet, it says that origin stories also offer our identity, like in the story of creation, wherein man's identity was established because man was created in the image and likeness of God, which means that there are some qualities of God which humans share in a limited fashion. For example, God is intelligent. Humans are also intelligent, however, in a limited fashion. In the same manner that God is generous, humans are also generous, but in a limited manner. Also, in the story of Genesis, the connection between man and nature was also established, wherein man was assigned as the steward of creation. Take note of the word steward. Man was not assigned as the owner, but only as a steward, which means that as a steward, man has an obligation to take care, preserve, and nourish what had been entrusted to him, which is creation or nature. Also, origin stories shape cultural memory through oral tradition, and at the same time, it enhances scientific curiosity. Our modern day origin story starts with the Big Bang. There are other theories. However, the most prominent theory on the origin of the universe is the Big Bang theory, wherein when the Big Bang started, it's not really an explosion, but it refers to an instantaneous expansion of time, space, matter, and energy. And basically, that's the main significance of the Big Bang. Time, matter, energy, and space were created. And then when matter and energy was created, particles were formed, specifically atoms, like hydrogen atoms and helium. This is very important to mention because the formation of hydrogen atoms led to the formation or to the birth of stars. And because of stars, different elements were produced, and these elements compose the human body. So we can say that we humans came from stardust. So this short video will give us an illustration of what the Big Bang is about.
Nearly 14 billion years ago, a moment that had only a split second to unfold precisely as it did, or the entire universe might have ended shortly after it began. It is the quietest quiet there has ever been. And then suddenly, out of nothing, everything begins. It is big history's first threshold. The Big Bang. In a fraction of a second, all the energy that will ever exist appears in an inconceivable flash.
Everything begins, as far as we know at this moment. And from the moment it appears, physicists can offer a very coherent account of everything that happens since.
Before the first second has passed, the fundamental forces appear that will govern all existence forever. One is the gravity that holds us to the Earth, and that we will need to overcome in order to fly. Another, the electromagnetism that lets you make a cell phone call.
The Big Bang is the creation event that lays the ground rules. It lays the ground rules of the fundamental forces, the strength of gravity, the speed of light, all of the things that will shape the rest of the history of the universe.
And in these first few seconds, a lot could have gone wrong. If gravity had been just a tiny bit stronger, all of existence would have collapsed in on itself. A bit weaker, and stars would never be able to form. But the Big Bang occurred at just the right force to set our entire history in motion. Which is why it's the first of 8 thresholds. We will see that they are all mysteriously connected. 8 thresholds that explain everything. 8 portals that lead to us. Including the next one. The moment when the immense heat, darkness, and chaos of the early universe suddenly explodes into a trillion points of light.
Origin stories can contain powerful emotional symbols that convey profound truths, but not necessarily in a literal sense. However, with the Big Bang Theory, our modern day origin story is based on science. It is based on data gathered from instruments on Earth and from space. So, the origin stories that we know in our culture were based on the stories even before science came in. Because this is how our ancestors had understood the world. So, there are profound truths that are present in the different origin stories that we know. For example, the story of creation in the Bible. The story of creation in Genesis did not intend to give a scientific account of how the world began, but a religious one. There is no story that will give us a complete picture. Science will give us an understanding of how the universe works. However, the origin stories that are present across different religions and across different cultures will give us profound truths about our existence which science itself cannot address or cannot answer. There are some profound truths like love, hope. These things are real these things are being experienced by humans, but these things cannot be explained by science. So therefore, as present, as discussed in our previous discussion, we have to look at reality in different lenses, like through the lens of faith and through the lens of science. Because there's no story that will give us a complete picture, as we've mentioned during our previous discussion, that the universe is still unfolding. So we have to wait, we have to give reverence on what the universe will reveal to us. Another origin story is our own story in Pampanga, which refers to the Sinukuan, a Kapampangan origin story. Sinukuan, a giant shapeshifter, ruled Mount Arayat, defended his land from invaders, later married the goddess Makiling. Their children symbolize Kapampangan virtues and ancestry. Meets, explains landscape formation and cultural identity. Sinukuan, also known as Suku, is known as the first inhabitant of what is now Pampanga, embodied royalty, wisdom, loyalty, strength, and love, which bears a Kapampangan identity. A shapeshifter, sometimes a man, a woman, or human or divine, Sinukuan oftentimes visited mortals in the nearby town in Arayat. Sinukuan reflects Kapampangan taste and love for celebration, as we all know that Kapampangans are known to have extravagant love for celebration and good taste, especially in food. Now, the story of Sinukuan started when there were some Taga-Ilog who invaded a riot and cut trees. And then Sinukuan, as the guardian of Mount Arayat, chose to defeat these Taga-Ilog together with their queen, Mount Makiling. Sinukuan threw big boulders among the enemies, and then later on, Queen Makiling admitted defeat and chose peace. Out of respect, Makiling called Sinukuan, which refers to the one to whom others surrender. Again, Sinukuan means the one to whom others surrender. Sinukuan and Makiling later became married and had three daughters, Malagu, Mainhin, Matimtiman, which bears the characteristics of Kapampangan women. On the other hand, these mortals or these daughters married three mortals, Masikan, Matapang, and Masipag, which bears male Kapampangan characteristics. Now, this cosmic rivalry extended to Apong Malyari of Mount Pinatubo, which is linked to the 1991 eruption. So the battle between Malyari and Sinukuan is a mythic battle said to echo into the present day. Now, there are parallels in the two narratives. Both begin with a singular powerful event or being. They transition from chaos to increasing complexity, like what happened in the Big Bang, wherein everything was in chaos, and then later on, with the increasing complexity, different formations and different thresholds were formed. The two narratives, the Big Bang and our origin story, reflects human need to understand beginnings and our own environment. Both offers values, both offer values and insight through different lenses. One is scientific and then the other one is based on mythology. Stories like Sinukuan and the Big Bang enrich our identity. They both explore origins, meaning, and complexity. Learning both fosters respect for culture and critical thinking. Big history values interdisciplinary understanding. This is the reason why even mythologies, which are part of our own culture, which reflects our origin story as Kapampangan, are being discussed in Big History. The origin of the universe gives us a better understanding of it and our place in the universe. Knowing the magnitude and vastness of the universe, it is a very humbling experience. Let us reflect on this. We're just a tiny speck in the universe. The universe will go on without us. But why do you think we exist? So this is a question that we all should reflect on. Thank you for listening.